கண்டிலம் என்றிட கருத்தெழு மாறும் விண்டிது விளக்கிடு விரலுரு ஓணார் விண்டிலை பண்டனி விளக்கினை என்றால் விண்டிடாதுன்னிலை விளக்கிட வென்றே வெண்டலம்ம செல்லம்ம விளங்கிட நந்தாய்.
In this video I'm going to be talking about the second verse of Arunachala Aṣṭakam. For those who've watched earlier verses, you will see that I'm sitting in the same place that I was sitting when I explained a little earlier. I explained the last verse of Arunachala Patikam and then the first verse of Arunachala Aṣṭakam. But since we have a very nice audience here, these deer, we decided to continue filming in the same place. This is in Richmond Park in London, and these are the red deer who live here and are very tame, and they're not frightened by people, unlike the deer usually are. So we have a good audience. As I explained in the previous video talking about the first verse of Arunachala Aṣṭakam, these two verses are semi-autobiographical. It doesn't strictly follow the chronology of Bhagavan's lifetime, but he expressed it in this way to show the connection between the thought of Arunachala or seeing Arunachala and self-investigation. That is, Arunachala has this unique power because Arunachala, though it manifests outwardly in the form of a hill, it's actually our own real nature. It is actually, as he said in the last verse of Arunachala Patikam, Giridu Parama Karadiya Vembol, Chetana Retane Kollo. How many are there like me who have been saved, who have been destroyed by thinking this hill to be the supreme? So if we believe Arunachala to be the supreme, it will draw our attention within and kill us without killing us, was the message in that last verse of Arunachala Patikam. So how it kills us? It does so by drawing our attention within, as he said in the 10th verse. So there's continuity of idea between all these verses. So in the previous verse of Arunachala, in the first verse of Arunachala Aṣṭakam, he says that Arunachala was shining in his mind from a young age, and even when he came to know that it's actually a place on earth, it's actually the same as Tiruvannāmalai, he didn't understand its meaning. And when it drew him close, he saw it standing as Achalam. Achalam can mean either motionlessness or a hill. So he ended that by saying kaṇḍēṉ, I saw it standing as Achalam, Achalama kaṇḍēṉ. In this verse, what happens when we see Arunachala? It turns our mind within. So that is the process of self-investigation stimulated by the thought or the sight of Arunachala is what he's talking about in this verse. In the first sentence he says, kaṇḍava ṉevaṉeṉak karuttiṉu ṇāḍak kaṇḍava ṇiṉṭṛiḍa niṉṭṛētu kaṇḍēṉ. That means, again, as I explained in the previous video, it's possible in Tamil to express ideas. In English, if you want to express a sentence without using an explicit subject, we can do so only when using passive voice. But in Tamil, it's possible to use an active voice without an explicit subject. But though the explicit subject is not specified here, it's because Bhagavan's talking about his experience, he is implied. However, in the first clause, kaṇḍava ṉevaṉeṉak karuttiṉu ṇāḍak, that means when some subject investigated within the mind who is the seer. So who is to investigate? The seer is obviously ego. So who is to investigate who is the seer? Ego itself. So the implication here is when the seer investigated within the mind, who is the seer? So when I look within, when ego looks within to see who am I, who is the one who is seeing all this, that process of self-investigation is what he's talking about here. Looking within, or investigating within the mind to see who is the seer. kaṇḍava ṇiṇḍṛiḍa niṉṭṛadu kaṇḍēṉ. That means I saw what niṇṭṛadu kaṇḍēṉ means I saw what remained, what stood. kaṇḍava ṇiṇḍṛiḍa, when the seer became non-existent. So if we look within keenly enough to see who is the seer, the seer is nothing but ego, and ego is not a real entity. Ego seems to exist only when it's seeing other things. If it tries to see itself, there's no such thing to be seen. So if we turn our attention wholly within to see who am I who is seeing all this, that seer will disappear, and what remain alone will remain. He says niṇḍṛiḍu kaṇḍēṉ. I saw what remained. What remains is not, the ego cannot see what remains when it ceases to exist. When it ceases to exist, what sees what remains is what remains. In other words, what remains is just pure self-awareness, which is the real form of Arunachala, which is our real nature. That the pure self-awareness alone sees itself. So ego can never realize Brahman. Brahman alone realizes Brahman. Brahman alone can know Brahman. And in fact, Brahman always knows Brahman. But the Brahmajnana, the knowledge or Atmajnana, the true knowledge of ourself seems to be missing, seems to be absent or obscured because we have risen as ego. And so instead of being aware of ourselves as we actually are, we're aware of ourselves as if we are a person. But if we turn within to see who we really are, this ego will dissolve, everything else will dissolve along with it, and what will then remain aware of itself, seeing itself, is what always exists and is always aware of itself. So Bhagavan often said, in the spiritual path, there's nothing actually to be gained. It's not a matter of gaining anything, but of losing everything. It's not Bhagavan sometimes joked about the English word realize. He said there's nothing to be realized. But what is real doesn't need to be realized. All that is required is to unrealize the unreal. Now we've realized ego. We take ego to be real. If we investigate this ego and see that there's no such thing, then what remains, that alone is the reality. And that is always the reality, and it's always aware of itself as it is. So we don't gain anything, we just lose the ego, and along with the ego we lose everything else. So that is the import of this sentence. kaṇḍava ṉevaṉeṇak karutteṛu ṇāḍak kaṇḍava ṇiṇḍṛiḍa niṉṭṛadu kaṇḍēṉ. When the seer investigated with the mind to see who is the seer, I saw what remained when the seer thereby became non-existent, is the meaning and implication of that sentence. Then in the next sentence he says, kaṇḍaṉa ṇeṇḍṛiḍa karutteṛa villai. That means the mind does not rise to say, I saw. That is, what is seeing all this is mind, or karutteṛu is what he says, which means mind, or it's referring to ego, because ego is the seeing element of the mind. So when ego is dissolved, there's nothing to rise and say, I have seen. Then in the next sentence he says, kaṇḍila ṇeṇḍṛiḍa karutteṛu māṟeṉ. In what way can the mind rise to say, I did not see? That means, since the mind doesn't rise to say, I saw, it also cannot rise to say, I did not see. That's why Bhagavan says in Ulladu, to say, I have known myself, or I have not known myself, both the grounds for ridicule. Our Atmaswarupa, our own real nature, doesn't say I have known myself, it doesn't say I have not known myself. But both of them there's no one to say that. There's no it's only ego who can say, I have realized myself, or I have not realized myself, I have known myself, I have not known myself. But there's no such entity. When the seer disappears, there's no mind or ego to rise and say, I have seen something or I have not seen something. Then in the next sentence, he expresses the ineffability of this state. Why there's no one there to say I have seen or I have not seen. And then he says in the next sentence, viṇḍidu, viḷakkiḍu, viṛaluṟu vōṇār, viṇḍidu, viṇḍilai, paṇḍunī, viļakkiṉai ṇeṉಢṛāl. That means who has the vōṇār means who has the power. Viṛaluṟu vōṇār means who has the power. Idu viļakkiḍu viṇḍu, to elucidate this by speaking. Paṇḍunī viļakkiṉai viṇḍilai. Paṇḍunī viṇḍilai viļakkiṉai ṇeṉಢṛāl. Since in ancient times you elucidated it without speaking. This is an indirect reference to Dakshinamurti, the Adi Guru, the original Guru, who revealed the truth to the Sanakadi rishis through silence. Arunachala is another manifestation of Dakshinamurti. Arunachala is also teaching through silence. Arunachala doesn't teach through words, but it reveals the truth without speaking. That is what he viṇḍilai viļakkiṉai. That is, you elucidated it without speaking. So the meaning and implication of this verse, of this sentence is, who has the power to elucidate this by speaking, when in ancient times even you as Dakshinamurti elucidated it without speaking. So this the goal we are seeking is beyond thought, it's beyond words, it cannot be expressed in words. It can only be realized in absolute silence. And how to experience that silence in which this will be revealed? Only by turning our attention within, allowing the ego to be consumed by that silence. Then the silence, which is our real nature, alone will remain. That alone will reveal everything. Everything means the only thing, which is that silence itself. So silence cannot be expressed in words. Silence can be expressed only by silence. And our real nature is infinite and eternal silence. It's also motionlessness, achala. So there's throughout Bhagavan's teachings, there's recurrent themes. That which actually is doesn't do anything, it just is. So it doesn't speak, it doesn't move, it is achala, it is mona. That is what Bhagavan is emphasizing in these verses. So it's beyond the power of words to express this, but that doesn't mean that verbal teachings are not necessary. Bhagavan came and gave us teachings in words in order to turn our attention back within, because only when we look within can we then, looking within is listening to a silent teaching. So to show us how we can access and understand the silent teaching, but teaching in words are necessary. The teaching in words are solely to turn our attention back within. Even though these poems are written in the form of praise to Arunachala, Bhagavan makes very, very clear, Arunachala is what's shining in our heart as I. Then in the final sentence of this verse, he says, viṇḍiṭādu duṉṉilai, viļakkiḍa ṇeṉಢṛē, viṇḍalam achalama viļakkiḍa niṉḍṛāi. Viṇḍiṭādu duṉṉilai, viļakkiḍa ṇeṉಢṛē, that means only to elucidate your state, without speaking. What does he mean by duṉṉilai, your state? That is the state of silent and motionless pure self-awareness. So only to elucidate your state of silent and motionless pure self-awareness, viṇḍiladu, without speaking, to elucidate it without speaking, viṇḍalam achalama viļakkiḍa niṉḍṛai. You stood as a hill, or you stood motionlessly, shining. Viṇḍalam, viṇ means the sky, talam means the earth in this context. So viṇḍalam implies you shining from earth to sky. There's also an underlying meaning. Though Arunachala is shining from earth to sky, it's actually beyond the limits of both. Arunachala is that which is shining beyond all limits. It is represented by a hill, represented or symbolized by a hill standing from earth to sky, but rises from earth to sky. So what Bhagavan says here, the whole purpose of Arunachala's manifestation as a hill is only to reveal his true state without speaking. And what is his true state? Nothing but silent and motionless self-awareness. That's why it cannot be expressed in words. It can only be expressed through silence. And to access that silence, we must become silent in order to understand that silence. So long as we are looking outwards, we are rising as ego and active. In order to subside back into the silence which is our real nature, we have to turn our attention back within, to see, look within to see who is the seer. If we look within to see who is the seer, we'll see that which remains when the seer becomes non-existent. And that is silence, that is achalam, that is arunachalam, that is our real nature.